The knife pressed harder against Jason's throat, drawing a thin line of blood that trickled warm down his neck. Vargas's breath reeked of whiskey and cruelty as he leaned in close, his snake tattoo seeming to writhe in the flickering streetlight. "You think you're a hero, street rat?" He laughed, the sound like broken glass scraping concrete. "You're nothing. Just another piece of trash I'm going to throw away." Behind Vargas, three of his Viper Kings held the 15-year-old girl. Kiara Brennan's copper-red hair was matted with blood, her designer jacket torn at the sleeve, but her gray eyes burned with defiance. She'd stopped screaming 5 minutes ago. Now she just watched this skinny, homeless boy who'd thrown himself between her and monsters with nothing but a wooden stick. Jason's hand tightened around his hickory weapon. The wood was slick with his own blood, staining the wrapped handle dark crimson. He could taste copper on his tongue, feel his vision blurring at the edges. But he didn't let go, wouldn't let go. "I said," Jason's voice came out as a rasp, barely a whisper, "get your hands off her." In the distance, growing louder like approaching thunder, came the unmistakable roar of Harley engines. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The sound rolled through the industrial district like a tidal wave of chrome and fury. Vargas's smile faltered for just a second. He had no idea what he'd just started. He had no idea whose daughter he'd tried to take. And he had absolutely no idea that the skinny kid bleeding out on the pavement and the fierce girl fighting in his peripheral vision were about to become living legends who'd earned their place in the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club with nothing but courage and a refusal to quit. 12 hours earlier, the stick made a satisfying whoosh as Jason swung it through the air. Once, twice, a diagonal slash that would have taken someone's legs out if they'd been standing there. The alley behind Murphy's Bar and Grill was his dojo. The dumpsters, his training dummies. The cracked pavement, his practice floor. At 15, Jason Cole had been on the streets long enough to know that survival wasn't about being the strongest. It was about being the most willing to do whatever it took. The hickory wood was smooth under his calloused palms, worn down by months of relentless use. He'd found it in a construction site 8 months ago, just a piece of scrap lumber destined for a bonfire. But he'd spent weeks sanding it down, shaping it, wrapping the handle with strips of old t-shirt to prevent slippage. It was roughly the length and weight of a bokken, a Japanese practice sword. Though Jason had never taken a martial arts class in his life, everything he knew came from YouTube videos watched on library computers and hard lessons learned in street fights that left scars on his ribs and knuckles. The morning sun hadn't fully risen yet. The sky was that particular shade of gray that promised another scorching day in the city. Jason liked this time, before the world woke up, before he had to put on the "don't mess with me" face that kept predators at bay. Crack. The stick connected with a garbage bag, sending it spinning across the alley. Jason pivoted, following through with the motion, bringing the stick back up into a defensive guard position. His arms burned, his shoulders screamed. But pain was just weakness leaving the body. Or so he told himself every morning when he ran through his routine. 50 strikes, 50 blocks, 50 thrusts, never fewer. Never skipped. This was his promise, his penance, his purpose. He'd gotten the stick after what happened to Maya, his little sister, 8 years old, bright smile that could light up the darkest foster home. Used to braid dandelions into chains and leave them on his pillow when she knew he'd had a bad day. They had been in foster care together, the last placement before Jason aged out at 15. Maya was still young enough to be adoptable, still innocent enough to believe in happy endings, still trusting enough to think adults always told the truth. But their foster father, Robert Henderson, had other ideas. Jason had seen the way Henderson looked at Maya, the way he found excuses to be alone with her, the way his hand lingered too long on her shoulder during dinner, the way her smile started disappearing, replaced by a hollow look that reminded Jason of soldiers he'd seen in documentary footage, the ones with shell shock. Jason had reported it, told the caseworker, Mrs. Patterson, exactly what he suspected. She'd promised to investigate, said she'd take it seriously, said Maya would be safe. 1 week later, Jason came home from his shift washing dishes at a diner to find Maya in the bathtub, empty pill bottle on the floor. The water was cold. Her lips were blue. 8 years old, and she decided the world was too much. The foster father said she'd been depressed. The system believed him. The investigation went nowhere. Henderson kept his foster license. Mrs. Patterson moved on to her next case, and Maya got a cheap funeral with 7 people in attendance, including Jason and 4 caseworkers who didn't even know her name without checking their files. Jason had run that night, couldn't stay in that house, couldn't be in the system anymore, couldn't trust adults who wore suits and made promises they never kept. He'd taken 3 changes of clothes, Maya's dandelion bracelet that he wore under his sleeve, and a burning rage that fueled every sunrise since, and he'd sworn on his sister's grave that didn't even have a proper headstone, that if he ever saw another kid in danger, he wouldn't wait for adults to help. He wouldn't trust the system. He wouldn't file reports and hope someone cared. He'd handle it himself. The stick became his promise, his weapon, his only friend in a world that had proven itself cruel to children who had no one to protect them. Jason finished his routine as the sun finally broke over the horizon, painting the alley in shades of orange and gold. Sweat dripped down his face despite the morning cool. His arms trembled from exertion. But he felt centered, ready, like a blade sharpened and waiting. Time to find somewhere to be for the day. The library opened in 2 hours. He could kill time there, maybe use the computers to watch more training videos. After that, his dishwashing shift at Angelo's started at 2. The owner, old man Angelo, didn't ask questions. Paid cash under the table. Let Jason take home leftover pasta at the end of the night. It wasn't much of a life, but it was his. Jason slung the stick over his shoulder and headed out of the alley. The city was waking up around him. Traffic building, people in suits rushing to jobs. Normal lives, normal problems. He walked with purpose, head up, eye scanning. Street kids who looked like victims got treated like victims. He'd learned to project confidence he didn't feel, to walk like he had somewhere important to be, to make eye contact just long enough to say, "I see you," without inviting confrontation. The stick helped. People saw it and made assumptions. Crazy homeless kid with a stick, baseball player, troublemaker. Whatever story they told themselves, it usually ended with better to just leave him alone. He was 3 blocks from the library when he saw her. Kiara Brennan stood in front of her bedroom mirror, studying her reflection with the intensity of a general planning a campaign. 15 years old. Copper red hair that fell to her shoulders in waves she'd inherited from her mother. Gray eyes that came from her father's side of the family. The Brennan line that stretched back to Ireland and was filled with warriors and rebels. She looked soft, that was the problem. Looked like a girl who'd never thrown a punch, never had to fight for anything, never faced real danger. Looked exactly like what she was, a sheltered motorcycle club princess who'd spent her entire life in a gilded cage. But appearances could be deceiving. Kiara pulled up her sleeve, revealing bruises on her forearm in various stages of healing. Purple, yellow, green. The rainbow of impact training. She'd been teaching herself to fight for 6 months now, ever since she'd overheard 2 of her father's men talking about how Kane Brennan's daughter was a liability, a weakness, something enemies could exploit. She'd started with YouTube videos, how to throw a proper punch, how to get out of a grab, how to use an attacker's momentum against them. She'd practiced in her room late at night, shadowboxing against imaginary threats. She'd stolen a heavy bag from the clubhouse garage and hung it in her closet, wrapping it in clothes to muffle the sound. She'd hit it until her knuckles bled, then wrapped them and hit it some more. Because 5 years ago, her mother had died. Lily Brennan, beloved wife of the Iron Wolves president, had been gunned down in a parking lot by Viper Kings trying to send a message to Kane. 3 bullets, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. Professional hit, clean execution. Kiara had been 10 years old, sitting in the back seat of the car, watching her mother bleed out on the asphalt while sirens wailed in the distance, and her father held Lily's hand and begged her not to leave. The Viper Kings had paid for that hit. Kane had made sure of it. But Lily Brennan was still dead. And Kiara had learned a lesson that day that had carved itself into her bones. Soft targets get killed. Victims warriors survive. She'd spent 5 years being protected, homeschooled, bodyguarded, kept away from the clubhouse when business was being conducted, treated like porcelain that might shatter if the wind blew too hard. She was done being porcelain. Kiara pulled on a leather jacket, one of her mother's old ones that she'd taken from storage. It smelled faintly of Lily's perfume, something floral and expensive that Kane had ordered by the case and now couldn't bear to throw away. The jacket was worn soft with age, the leather molded to Lily's body shape that was close enough to Kiara's that it fit like it had been made for her. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, her bodyguard. "Ready when you are, Ember." Ember, that was Marcus's nickname for her, born from her red hair and her temper that could flare hot when provoked. He was the only one besides her father who got away with calling her anything other than Kiara. Marcus had been with the family since before she was born. Ex-Marine, loyal to Kane beyond question, but also the only person in the Iron Wolves who treated Kiara like a human being instead of a fragile memorial to Lily Brennan. She'd convinced him after weeks of pleading to take her into the city today, just to get ice cream, just for an hour, just to feel normal for 60 minutes of her 15-year-old life. Kane didn't know. He'd forbidden it. Too dangerous, he'd said. Too many enemies. Too much risk. Stay home. Stay safe. Stay alive by staying hidden. But Kiara was tired of hiding. Tired of watching life through bulletproof windows. Tired of being a prisoner in her own home because 5 years ago someone had killed her mother and her father had decided that meant she needed to live in a tomb. She grabbed her backpack, a leather thing with too many zippers, and headed downstairs. The house was massive, a fortress disguised as a suburban mansion. High walls, security cameras, armed guards disguised as landscapers. It sat on 20 acres of land outside the city, close enough to the Iron Wolves clubhouse for quick response, but far enough away to feel separate from the club business. Marcus waited by the black SUV in the driveway. He was 40-something, built like a linebacker, with close-cropped hair, going gray at the temples, and eyes that never stopped scanning for threats. He wore jeans and a casual button-down shirt, but Kiara knew there was a Glock 19 in his waistband and probably as a backup piece on his ankle. "Your father know about this?" Marcus asked as she approached. "What do you think?" "I think I'm going to get my ass chewed when he finds out." "Then we better make it worth the lecture." Kiara climbed into the passenger seat. "Ice cream, 1 hour, then we're back before he even knows we're gone." Marcus sighed but got behind the wheel. "You're going to be the death of me, Ember." "Nah, I'll keep you young." The drive into the city took 40 minutes. Kiara watched the landscape change from suburban sprawl to urban density, buildings growing taller, traffic getting thicker. People everywhere living their lives, completely unaware of motorcycle clubs and gang wars and the complex web of alliances and territories that govern the city's underworld. She wondered what it was like to be normal, to worry about homework and boy bands and whether your jeans made your butt look good. Instead of wondering if today was the day someone tried to kill you because your father ran the biggest motorcycle club in the state, Marcus parked near MacArthur Park, in a neighborhood that straddled the line between gentrification and decay. There was an ice cream truck here, one of those old-fashioned ones with the jingly music and the cartoon characters painted on the side. Kiara had been begging to come here for weeks. It was where her mother used to take her when she was little, back before the world got complicated and dangerous. "Chocolate and vanilla twist," Kiara told Marcus as they approached the truck. "2 cones," Marcus ordered, his eyes never stopping their constant threat assessment, watching the street, the parked cars, the rooftops, always protecting, always vigilant. Kiara took her cone and closed her eyes, letting the first taste of cold sweetness transport her back to better times. She was 5 years old again, holding her mother's hand, laughing as ice cream dripped down her fingers. That's when she noticed the van, black, tinted windows, parked across the street with the engine running. It had been there when they arrived, she realized. She'd seen it on the drive-in but hadn't registered it as a threat. But now, watching it, she felt her mother's training kick in. The lessons Lily had taught her before she died, the ones Kiara had forgotten in her grief but were apparently carved into her muscle memory. Never ignore your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. The van's side door was slightly ajar, just a crack, like someone was waiting inside ready to move fast. "Marcus," Kiara said quietly. 3 o'clock. Black van. Marcus turned casual, licking his ice cream like he didn't have a care in the world. But Kiara saw his jaw tighten, saw his free hand drift toward his waistband. "I see it," he said. "We're leaving. Now." But now was too late. The van's door slid open. Three men burst out like a coiled spring released. Ski masks, black tactical gear, moving with the precision of a practice team. The first one had a taser, the kind that shoots prongs. The second carried a pistol with a suppressor. The third had a cloth bag, the kind used to cover someone's head during a kidnapping. They moved fast, professional, experienced. The taser caught Marcus in the chest before he could draw his weapon. 50,000 volts dropped him like a puppet with cut strings. He hit the pavement hard, his ice cream cone splattering across the sidewalk in a splash of brown and white. His body convulsed. His hands spasmed away from his gun. Kiara didn't scream, didn't freeze. Training took over. The months of shadowboxing and heavy bag work and YouTube self-defense videos condensing into pure instinct. She threw her ice cream cone at the closest man's face. It hit his mask, a small victory that bought her 1 second. She kicked backward, her heel connecting with someone's shin, heard a grunt of pain, spun away from grabbing hands. But there were three of them and one of her. 15 years old and 120 pounds soaking wet versus three grown men who did this for a living. A hand grabbed her hair, yanked hard. She felt strands tear from her scalp. Used the momentum to spin, drove her elbow into someone's ribs. It connected solid. Another grunt, but then arms wrapped around her from behind, lifting her off the ground. She kicked, thrashed, bit down on the arm holding her and tasted blood through fabric. The man swore but didn't let go. "Feisty little bitch," he growled. "Vargas is going to enjoy breaking you." The bag came down over her head. Darkness, the smell of old canvas and fear. She was being dragged toward the van. Marcus was down. No one was helping. A woman pulled her toddler away. A businessman in a suit practically dove into his car. This was the kind of neighborhood where people knew better than to be witnesses. Kiara's world had shrunk to darkness and strong hands and the certainty that if she got in that van, she was dead. Not immediately, but eventually, after Vargas used her to hurt her father, after the Viper Kings made their point, after she'd served her purpose as a weapon against Kane Brennan. She opened her mouth to scream, to fight, to do something. That's when she heard the impact, a sound like a baseball bat hitting a watermelon. Wet, solid, devastating, the hands holding her loosened. She hit the ground hard, bag still over her head, and scrambled away on instinct. Ripped the bag off in time to see something impossible. A skinny kid, maybe her age, wearing torn jeans and a faded t-shirt. He held a wooden stick like it was Excalibur. And he'd just broken one of the Viper King's kneecaps with a swing that would have made Babe Ruth proud. The man screamed. His leg buckled sideways at an angle legs weren't meant to bend. He went down in a heap. The kid didn't stop. He jabbed the stick forward like a spear, catching the gunman in the solar plexus. The man doubled over, gasping for air, his weapon clattering to the pavement. 2 down, 1 to go. The third man had a knife. A wicked-looking thing with a serrated edge that caught the sunlight and promised pain. He pointed it at the kid. "Back off, street rat, or I'll gut you right here." The kid kept coming. No hesitation, no fear on his face, just grim determination in a wooden stick that shouldn't have been able to stop 3 armed men, but somehow was. The man with the knife lunged. Fast. Professional. A strike meant to end the fight in 1 move. The kid blocked with his stick. The blade bit into the wood, carving a deep groove. They grappled. The kid was smaller, clearly weaker, but he fought dirty, stomped on the man's instep, head-butted him in the nose, bit down on the hand holding the knife. The man screamed and stumbled back, dropping the blade. Kiara saw her chance. Marcus's gun was right there, 2 feet away, lying on the pavement where he dropped it when the taser hit. She dove for it, grabbed it. The metal was warm from Marcus's body heat, heavier than she'd expected. She'd never fired a gun before. Her father had forbidden it. Too dangerous, too violent. His daughter wasn't going to grow up around firearms. But she'd watched. God, she'd watched. Seen the Iron Wolves members practice at the range behind the clubhouse. Seen Marcus clean his weapon 1,000 times. She knew the theory even if she'd never done it for real. Safety off, both hands. Front sight, focus, squeeze, don't pull. The man with the knife was advancing on the kid again. The kid was bleeding from a dozen cuts, his stick slick with red. He was swaying on his feet but still standing, still fighting. Kiara pointed the gun at the sky and pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening, louder than she'd imagined. The recoil jerked her arms up, nearly making her drop the weapon. But the effect was immediate. Everyone froze. The man with the knife turned to look at her. This 15-year-old girl with copper-red hair and gray eyes like winter storms, holding a Glock 19 in a two-handed grip that was surprisingly steady for someone who'd never held a gun before. "Get away from him," Kiara said. Her voice shook, but the gun didn't. "Now!" The man actually laughed. "Girl, you don't have the guts to—" Kiara shot again, this time aiming at his feet. The bullet sparked off the pavement, inches from his boot. Not a great shot, but close enough to make her point. "I said, get away!" The man looked at his two partners, one with a shattered kneecap, one still wheezing from a stick to the gut. Then he looked at Kiara, then at the kid with the stick who was barely standing but somehow still looked dangerous. He ran, dove into the van. The engine roared, tires squealed. The van swerved away from the curb, clipped a parked car, and disappeared around the corner in a cloud of burning rubber. Silence fell over the street, broken only by the cheerful jingle of the ice cream truck and Marcus's groaning as he started to recover from the taser. Kiara stood there, gun in hand, adrenaline singing through her veins. She was shaking now, post-action tremors that made her knees weak. She'd just fired a gun, twice, had almost been kidnapped. Would have been if not for— She looked at the kid, really looked at him for the first time. He was young, her age, maybe younger. Dirty blonde hair that needed cutting, green eyes that were too old for his face. Skinny in the way that spoke of missed meals and hard living. The stick in his hand was beautiful in its simplicity, hickory wood worn smooth with use, wrapped handle, silvery scars where blades had bit into it during other fights. He was staring at her with something like wonder. "You shot at him," the kid said. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. "You actually shot at him. He was going to stab you." Kiara realized she was still pointing the gun. She lowered it carefully, engaged the safety the way she'd seen Marcus do 1,000 times. "I couldn't just watch." Most people would have. He swayed, put a hand against a parked car to steady himself. Most people run away. That's when Kiara saw how badly he was hurt. His t-shirt was shredded. Underneath, she could see cuts, defensive wounds on his arms, a deeper gash on his side that was bleeding freely. He'd been stabbed, multiple times, and he was still standing through sheer willpower. "You're hurt," she said stupidly. "Obviously." "I'm fine." He tried to stand up straighter, failed. His legs buckled. "Just need to. He collapsed. Kiara caught him before he hit the ground, or tried to. He was heavier than he looked, dead weight pulling them both down. They ended up in a tangle on the pavement, his blood soaking into her mother's leather jacket. Marcus was pulling himself upright, still shaking from the taser. "Kiara, are you— what the hell?" And then the sound that would change everything. Motorcycles, dozens of them. The distinctive roar of Harley-Davidson engines that could only mean one thing. The Iron Wolves had arrived. They came around the corner in a wave of chrome and leather. 40 bikes, 50, more. Led by her father, Kane Brennan, on his custom black and silver Harley that was more weapon than vehicle. Behind him rode Hammer, Tank, Doc, Reaper, Ghost, all the senior members of the club. They'd been tracking Marcus's phone. Of course they had. Kane didn't let his daughter go anywhere without 3 redundant tracking systems. He'd probably known they left the house before Marcus had the SUV in gear. The motorcycles formed a perimeter around the scene. Engines cut off one by one, leaving an echoing silence. Men dismounted, assessed, understood the situation in seconds. Kane reached Kiara first. 6'3" of barely controlled rage in a leather vest covered with patches that told the story of 30 years in the Iron Wolves. His graying beard couldn't hide the scar on his jaw from a knife fight in his youth. His gray eyes, so like Kiara's, took in everything. His daughter, covered in blood, holding a gun, sitting on the pavement with an unconscious homeless kid bleeding out in her lap. 2 Viper Kings down, one with a shattered knee, one just starting to sit up and immediately regretting it when Tank put a boot on his chest. And Marcus just getting to his feet, looking like he'd been hit by lightning. "Daddy," Kiara said. Her voice was small, a child's voice. Nothing like the steady command she'd used when she'd fired the gun. "They tried to take me. They were going to—" "I know, baby." Kane's voice was gentle, carefully controlled, the kind of calm that came before volcanic eruptions. "Are you hurt?" "No, but he is." She looked down at the kid. His eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow. "He saved me. All three of them, and he had a stick, Daddy, just a stick, and he fought them for me." Kane knelt down, looked at the kid, then at his daughter, then at Marcus. "What happened?" Marcus gave the short version, the van, the ambush, the taser. Then his voice filled with something like awe. "Kiara shot at them, boss, put 2 rounds in the air, held them off while this kid beat the hell out of a viper with a piece of wood." Kane looked at his daughter, really looked, saw her sitting in her mother's jacket, holding a gun she wasn't supposed to know how to use, covered in someone else's blood but unharmed. Saw the fierce determination in her eyes that reminded him so much of Lily, it hurt. His little girl wasn't little anymore. "Doc," Kane barked, "get over here. Kid's bleeding out." Doc pushed through the crowd, late 50s, gray ponytail, blue scrubs under his leather cut. He dropped to his knees beside Kiara, hands already moving with practiced efficiency. Multiple stab wounds, defensive cuts on the arms, deeper penetration on the left side, possible internal bleeding. Doc looked up at Kane. "We need to move him now. Hospital will ask too many questions. I can handle this at the clubhouse if we move fast." "Do it." Kane stood, looked at his men. "Tank, Hammer, get the Vipers in a van, alive. I want to know everything about this hit. Ghost, Reaper, sweep the area for witnesses. Anyone who saw anything gets a visit and a suggestion to forget. Bones, call our cop. I want this scene cleaned before official PD shows up." The Iron Wolves moved like a machine. Years of practice made them efficient. The wounded Vipers were zip-tied and dragged away. Shell casings picked up. Blood washed away with bottles of water. In 5 minutes, it would be like nothing had happened. Kane turned back to his daughter. "Can you stand?" Kiara nodded. She tried to move the kid, but Doc stopped her. "I got him, Ember." Doc's voice was gentle. He'd been calling her that since she was 10, since the funeral, since the day he'd seen her sitting by her mother's grave with eyes that burned with rage instead of tears. "You did good, real good. But I need you to let go now so I can save his life." Kiara looked down at the kid one more time. His face was peaceful in unconsciousness. Young, vulnerable. Nothing like the fierce warrior who'd charged 3 armed men with nothing but a stick and audacity. She carefully lifted his head from her lap, stood on shaking legs. The adrenaline was wearing off now, leaving her cold and hollow. Kane pulled her into a hug, a real one, the kind he hadn't given her since she was small. "You scared 10 years off my life, baby girl. I'm sorry." "Don't be." He pulled back, held her at arm's length. "You survived. You fought. You saved that kid's life and your own. Your mother would be proud." Would she? Kiara wasn't sure. Lily had been strong, but she'd also been dead, killed because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Kiara had spent 5 years being protected, being kept safe, being treated like she might break. Today she'd proven she wouldn't break. She'd bend, fight, survive. "Who is he?" Kiara asked, watching Doc and Hammer carefully lift the kid onto a makeshift stretcher made from leather jackets. "The boy with the stick." "Don't know yet." Kane picked up the stick where it had fallen, examined it. The wood was scarred from blade strikes. The handle was wrapped in old t-shirt fabric. It was crude, practical, the weapon of someone who had nothing but refused to be helpless. "But we're going to find out, and we're going to make sure he gets the best care we can give him." "Wait." Kane looked at his daughter. "Because he saved your life. Because he charged 3 armed men with a stick to protect a stranger. Because that kind of courage is rare, and in our world, rare things are valuable." He handed Kiara the stick. It was heavier than she'd expected, still warm from the kid's hands, stained with his blood. Hold on to this, Kane said. When he wakes up, he'll want it back. It's important to him. I can tell. Kiara held the stick carefully, like it was precious, which maybe it was. This piece of wood had saved her life, had stood between her and monsters, had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapons weren't guns or knives, but the will to use whatever you had to protect someone who needed protecting. The Iron Wolves mounted their bikes, engines roared to life. The kid was loaded into the back of an SUV with Doc hovering over him, monitoring vitals. Marcus drove, still shaky but functional. Kiara rode with her father, sitting behind him on his Harley, arms wrapped around his waist, the stick clutched in one hand. As they pulled away from the scene, she looked back. The ice cream truck was still there, still playing its cheerful music. A small crowd had gathered, drawn by the noise but kept back by the Iron Wolves' reputation. The pavement was still wet where someone had washed away blood. An hour ago, Kiara had been desperate for a taste of normal life, for 60 minutes of freedom, for ice cream and sunshine and pretending she was just a regular girl. Now she knew the truth. There was no such thing as normal. Not for her. Not for the kid with the stick. Not for anyone who lived in the world where motorcycle clubs and street gangs fought territorial wars and children were weapons to be used against their parents. But there was survival. There was fighting back. There was refusing to be a victim even when the odds were impossible. Kiara Brennan, 15 years old, daughter of the Iron Wolves president, held tight to her father and to the stick that had saved her life. And she made a promise to herself. The same kind of promise Jason had made 8 months ago in an alley behind Murphy's Bar and Grill. She would never be helpless again. Never be a target. Never be something that needed protecting. She would learn to protect herself. And maybe, if she was lucky, she'd learn to protect others too. The motorcycles roared through the city, a parade of chrome and power. People stopped to watch, some in fear, some in awe, everyone in respect. The Iron Wolves were going home, and they were bringing 2 new souls with them. One, a homeless boy who'd proven that courage wasn't about size or strength, but about heart. And one, a sheltered girl who discovered that porcelain could be melted down and reforged into steel. Behind them, unknown to everyone, a black van sat parked 2 blocks away. Inside, Vargas watched through binoculars as the motorcycle club disappeared into traffic. His hand was wrapped in bandages where the street rat had bitten him. His pride was wounded worse than his flesh. He pulled out his phone, made a call. When it connected, he spoke 3 words. It's not over. Then he hung up, started the engine, and began planning his revenge. The war had just begun, and before it was finished, everyone would learn that some battles aren't won by the strongest or the best armed. Sometimes they're won by the ones who refuse to quit, the ones who fight with sticks and stolen guns and hearts too brave for their own good. Sometimes they're won by a homeless boy and a sheltered girl who found each other on the worst day of their lives and discovered they were stronger together than they had ever been apart. The sun was setting over the city as the Iron Wolves reached their clubhouse. The massive converted warehouse sat like a fortress on the edge of the industrial district. High walls, reinforced gates, security that would make a military base jealous. Inside, Doc was already setting up his medical bay. Hammer was making calls to allied chapters, spreading word about the Viper King's attack. Tank was beginning the interrogation of the 2 captured gang members, his methods thorough and unpleasant. Kane stood in his office, looking out the window at his kingdom. His daughter was safe, traumatized probably, changed definitely, but alive. And in the medical bay, a skinny homeless kid fought for his life with the same determination he'd shown fighting 3 armed men. Neither Kane nor Kiara knew it yet, but that kid's name was Jason Cole, and he was about to become the most protected person in the entire criminal underworld, all because he'd picked up a stick and refused to let bad things happen to someone who couldn't defend herself. All because sometimes the smallest acts of courage have the biggest consequences. All because in a world of wolves and vipers, sometimes what you need most is someone too stubborn to know when to quit. The iron shield was forming, and it would change everything. Jason woke in pieces. First came sensation, soft fabric against his skin, not concrete, not cardboard, an actual mattress, sheets that smelled like laundry detergent instead of mildew and street filth. the kind of clean that spoke of money and care, and a world he'd stopped believing existed. Then came sound, voices arguing in hushed tones somewhere beyond the walls, medical equipment beeping in steady rhythm, the distant rumble of motorcycles, heavy boots on concrete floors, the particular silence of a building full of dangerous men trying to be quiet. Finally came sight, a ceiling, white, clean, recessed lighting that didn't flicker or buzz, no water stains, no cracks, just perfect, pristine white that hurt his eyes after months of staring up at overpass concrete and cardboard box interiors. Jason tried to sit up. Pain exploded through his torso like someone had driven a railroad spike through his ribs and set it on fire. He gasped, fell back against pillows that were too soft, too clean, too wrong. Whoa, whoa, easy there, warrior. A new voice, older, male, with the practiced calm of someone who'd seen plenty of injuries and wasn't impressed by pain. A man appeared in Jason's peripheral vision, late 50s, graying hair tied back in a ponytail, blue scrubs splattered with old bloodstains that industrial washing couldn't quite remove. He wore a leather vest over the scrubs. Iron Wolves MC, medical patch on the front. You've got 17 stitches in your side, the man continued, adjusting an IV bag hanging beside the bed. 12 in your left arm, 8 in your right, and a concussion that probably scrambled your brains pretty good. So do yourself a favor and stay down before you tear something. Where? Jason's voice was a croak. His throat felt like he'd swallowed broken glass. Where am I? Iron Wolves Clubhouse, Medical Bay. I'm Doc. Not a real doctor, but I've patched up enough bar fights and bullet wounds to fake it pretty convincingly. Doc pulled up a chair, sat down with the ease of someone settling in for a conversation. You're lucky that stab wound missed everything important by about 2 inches. Any deeper, and you'd be having this conversation with St. Peter instead of me. Jason tried to process this. Clubhouse, motorcycle club. He remembered the engines, the man called Kane, the girl. The girl with copper red hair and gray eyes who'd shot at a Viper King while Jason bled out on the pavement. The girl, Jason managed. Kiara, is she? She's fine. Traumatized but physically unharmed. Thanks to you. Doc leaned back, studying Jason with professional interest mixed with something else. Curiosity, maybe, or respect. You want to tell me what the hell you were thinking, taking on 3 armed men with a stick? Couldn't let them take her. Most people would have called the cops. Cops are slow. Jason had learned that lesson with Maya. Cops took reports and filed paperwork and showed up after the damage was done. She needed help right then. Doc laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Fair point. Well, you're going to be hurting for a while. I've got you on antibiotics to prevent infection, painkillers to take the edge off. You'll need to stay still for at least a week. Let those stitches heal properly. A week. Jason couldn't afford a week. He had to get back to the streets. Had to maintain his territory. Had to what? He had nothing. No place to go. No one waiting for him. No job that wouldn't replace him in a day. The library didn't care if he showed up. Angelo might wonder where his dishwasher went, but there were 100 other desperate kids who'd take the position. My stick, Jason said suddenly. The panic hit him hard. The hickory stick. Where is it? Doc's expression softened. Kane's got it. Said it was important. He'll bring it by later. As if summoned by his name, the door opened and Kane Brennan walked in. He looked even more intimidating indoors. 6'3", probably 250 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. His leather vest was decorated with patches Jason didn't understand. 1%er, BFFB, a wolf's head, various pins and medals that told stories in a language Jason didn't speak. Doc, how's our guest? Stable, stubborn, asking about his stick. Doc stood, stretched. I'll give you some privacy. Jason, you need anything, press that button. I'll be back to check on you in a couple hours. And I mean it about staying still. You tear those stitches, I'm going to be pissed. Doc left. The room suddenly felt smaller with just Kane in it. The man's presence was overwhelming. He moved to the other side of the bed, his boots heavy on the concrete floor. Everything about him screamed danger, power, violence barely leashed. But when he spoke, his voice was careful. Controlled. Jason, right? That's what your ID said. Learner's permit. Never upgraded to a real license. Jason nodded. He'd forgotten he even had that permit. He'd gotten it 2 years ago, back when he'd still believed in futures and planning ahead. I'm Kane Brennan, president of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club, national chapter. Kane pulled up the chair Doc had vacated. Somehow he made sitting look like a threat. The girl you saved, Kiara. She's my daughter, my only child. Jason's stomach dropped. He'd saved the daughter of a motorcycle club president. That was either the best or worst thing he could have done. What you did today, Kane's voice was carefully neutral. There aren't words for it. You put yourself between armed kidnappers and my baby girl. You fought them off with a goddamn stick. Do you understand how rare that is? How fucking insane and brave and stupid? Jason didn't know how to respond. He'd just done what needed doing. What Maya would have wanted him to do. What he'd promised himself he'd do if he ever saw another kid in danger. The men who attacked Kiara, Kane continued, they're Viper Kings, rival gang, been encroaching on our territory for months. This was an escalation, a message. They broke the oldest rule in the book. His hands curled into fists. Children are off limits. You don't target kids, ever. It's the line even criminals don't cross. But they did. Yeah, they did. Kane's jaw was tight. And now they're going to learn what happens when you break that rule. But first, he reached into his vest and pulled out Jason's stick. The hickory was still in one piece, though new scars joined the old ones. Someone had cleaned it. The blood was gone. The wrapped handle had been rewrapped in fresh cloth, black and soft. But there was something new. Along the length of the stick, someone had used a wood-burning tool to etch words in careful script. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important. Below that, the Iron Wolves logo, a snarling wolf's head with motorcycle chains for a collar. It got pretty beat up during the fight, Kane said quietly, but we reinforced it. Had our metalsmith add some hidden steel core. It's not just a stick anymore, Jason, it's a symbol. Evidence of what you did. Jason took the stick with trembling hands. It felt different, heavier, stronger, but still his. Still the promise he'd made to Maya. I also had him add something else. Kane pointed to the base of the stick where a small metal plate was attached. Engraved on it, property of Jason Cole, Iron Wolves MC. I'm not, Jason's voice caught. I'm not in your club. Not yet. You're 15. Legal prospect age is 16. But that doesn't matter. Kane leaned forward. As of today, you're under Iron Wolves protection. Anyone fucks with you, they fuck with us. Anyone threatens you, they threaten us. You saved my daughter, Jason. That makes you family. Family. The word hit Jason like a physical blow. He hadn't had family since Maya died. Hadn't dared to hope for it. Family meant people who stayed, who cared, who didn't disappear when things got hard. I don't understand. You don't have to. Just accept it. Kane stood. Rest. Heal. When you're ready, we'll talk about your future. But know this. You'll never sleep on the street again. You'll never go hungry. You'll never be alone. That's my promise. He moved toward his door, then paused, looked back. And Jason, thank you for my daughter's life. I can never repay that debt, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying. After he left, Jason lay there holding his reinforced stick. Tears streamed down his face for the first time since Maya's funeral. He'd spent 8 months alone, 8 months surviving, 8 months convinced the world was cruel, and no one cared about homeless kids with nothing. He'd been wrong. In another room down the hall, Kiara Brennan sat on an identical medical bed, staring at her hands. They'd cleaned her up, changed her clothes, put her in fresh jeans and a t-shirt, but she could still see the blood, Jason's blood. It had soaked into her mother's leather jacket, now in a plastic bag marked biohazard, because Doc said the stains would never come out. Her father had been in twice, asked if she was okay, asked if she needed anything, then left to handle business. The Viper Kings in the basement, the cleanup crew, the Allied chapters being mobilized. War was coming, everyone knew it, But all Kiara could think about was the boy with the stick. He'd saved her life. No hesitation, no calculation of odds. Just saw someone in danger and charged in with nothing but a piece of wood and more courage than sense. She'd shot at a man today. Fired a gun. The recoil still echoed in her wrists. The sound still rang in her ears. She'd crossed a line, taken action, proven she wasn't helpless. But Jason had crossed that line first. For her, a complete stranger. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," Kiara called. Doc entered, carrying a tray with sandwiches and juice boxes. "Figured you might be hungry. You've been in here 3 hours and I haven't seen you eat." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway. Your body needs fuel after an adrenaline dump like that." Doc set the tray on the bedside table. "I checked on your friend, Jason. He's awake, asking about you. Is he okay? Physically, he'll heal. Mentally?" Doc shrugged. "That kid's been through hell. I can see it in his eyes. Whatever put him on the streets, it wasn't pretty. But he's tough. Tougher than he looks." Kiara picked up a sandwich. Peanut butter and jelly, cut into triangles, like she was still a child. "Can I see him?" "Not yet. He needs rest. You both do. Tomorrow maybe, if you're both stable." Doc sat on the edge of the bed. "You did good today, Ember. Real good. Not many people could have handled that situation the way you did." "I was terrified." "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what needs to be done despite being scared." Doc's voice was gentle. "Your mother would be proud." Would she? Kiara wasn't sure. Lily Brennan had been strong, but she'd also been dead. Killed because she couldn't defend herself. Because she'd relied on others for protection. Because in the end, being loved by a powerful man hadn't been enough to keep her safe. "Doc?" Kiara's voice was small. "Am I a bad person for shooting at him?" "You fired warning shots, didn't hit him. That shows restraint most adults don't have." Doc studied her. "You're asking the wrong question. The real question is, are you okay with what you did?" Was she? Kiara examined her feelings, looked for guilt, remorse, horror at having escalated violence. She found none of those things. What she found was satisfaction. She'd fought back, saved herself and Jason, proven she was more than a helpless victim waiting to be rescued. "Yeah," she said finally. "I am." "Then that's all that matters." Doc stood. "Eat, rest. Tomorrow's a new day, and tomorrow you and Jason can start figuring out what comes next." The next morning, Jason woke to find he wasn't alone. A little girl sat in the chair beside his bed, maybe 8 or 9 years old, dark hair and pigtails, wearing a unicorn t-shirt and jeans with cartoon characters on the pockets. She had a book in her lap, but wasn't reading it, just watching him with curious eyes. "Hi," she said when she saw he was awake. "I'm Sophie. Kane's my uncle. Well, not really my uncle, but he's been taking care of me since my dad died." "Are you the boy who saved Kiara?" Jason blinked, tried to process this. "Yeah, I guess." "That was really brave. Kiara's nice. She teaches me stuff sometimes when her dad lets her visit. Math and reading and things." Sophie swung her legs, too short to reach the floor. "Do you have a family?" The question was innocent, just a kid making conversation. But it stabbed Jason right in the chest. "Not anymore." "Me neither. Well, except the club. They're kind of like family. Loud and scary, but they take care of each other." Sophie tilted her head. "Are you going to stay? Kane said you might. He said you are special because you're brave and good, and those things are rare." Before Jason could answer, the door opened. Kiara walked in and Sophie jumped up with a squeal. "Kiara, you're okay. Daddy said you got attacked by bad men, but Jason saved you and you shot a gun and everything." Kiara smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. "Hey, Sophie. Yeah, I'm okay. Thanks to Jason." She looked at him then. Really looked at him. Jason saw himself through her eyes. Skinny, homeless kid in a hospital bed. Covered in bandages, probably smelling like antiseptic and poor life choices despite Doc's cleanup efforts. But Kiara didn't look at him with pity or disgust. She looked at him like he was important, like he mattered. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Kiara. We didn't really get a chance to introduce ourselves properly yesterday." "Jason." His voice was steadier today. "How are you doing?" Better than I should be, probably. Doc says I'm in shock, that it'll hit me later. She moved closer to the bed. I wanted to say thank you for what you did. You didn't have to help me. You could have run away. I couldn't just watch. Most people did. Her voice was quiet. There were at least 10 people on that street. You were the only one who did anything. Sophie bounced between them. Are you two going to be friends? You should be friends. You saved each other. That's like blood brothers, but more cool. Sophie, Kiara said with gentle exasperation. Give us some space, okay? Fine, but I think you should be friends. Sophie skipped toward the door, then paused. Jason, there's going to be a big dinner tonight. Everyone's going to be there. You should come if Doc says you're allowed to get up. It's going to be fun. Well, loud, but the food is really good. She left in a whirl of pigtails and unicorns. Kiara pulled up the chair, sat down. They studied each other in the kind of awkward silence that happens between two teenagers who've been through trauma together but don't actually know each other. So, Kiara said finally, you've been on the streets a while. It wasn't a question. Jason nodded anyway. 8 months. Why? The question was direct, not judgmental, just curious. Jason found himself answering with an honesty he hadn't planned. My sister died. Maya, she was 8. We were in foster care and bad things happened. Things adults should have stopped but didn't. She killed herself. The words came out flat, emotionless. He'd told this story so many times in his head that it had lost its power to hurt. Or maybe he'd just gone numb. I couldn't stay in the system after that, couldn't trust it, so I left. Kiara was quiet for a long moment. My mother died 5 years ago. Viper Kings killed her, shot her in a parking lot while I watched from the back seat. 3 bullets. She died holding my father's hand. Understanding passed between them, the kind that didn't need words. They'd both lost people. Both learned that the world was cruel. Both survived anyway. Is that why you fight? Jason asked. Why you knew how to use that gun? I've been teaching myself self-defense, basic combat stuff, YouTube videos, practice in secret. Kiara looked down at her hands. My father tries to protect me by keeping me locked away, but I don't want to be protected. I want to be able to protect myself. Your mother can't save you if you can't save yourself first. Your mother tried to save you, though. That's what warriors do. Kiara looked up sharply. Those were almost the exact words she'd thought yesterday. You sound like you know something about warriors. I know about failing to protect people you love, about making promises to do better. Jason touched his stick, which was leaning against the wall beside the bed. This stick is my promise, that I won't stand by and watch bad things happen to people who can't defend themselves. That's a heavy promise for a 15-year-old. You held a gun on a grown man yesterday. That's a heavy action for a 15-year-old. They smiled at each other. Small smiles. Fragile, but real. My father wants to train us, Kira said. You and me. He talked to Hammer. They're going to teach us proper fighting. Not just street brawling and YouTube videos, real combat training. Why me? Because you saved his daughter. Because you're under Iron Wolf's protection now. Because, Kiara paused, because he sees something in you. And honestly, so do I. What do you see? Someone who didn't quit when quitting would have been easier. Someone who chose to help when everyone else chose to run. Someone who might actually understand what it's like to be different. Jason understood. Kiara was different. A motorcycle club princess who wanted to be a warrior. A girl in a world of violent men trying to find her place. Trying to prove she was more than her father's daughter. He was different too. A homeless kid who'd rather fight than run. Who'd rather protect strangers than protect himself. Who'd made a promise to a dead sister and intended to keep it no matter what. Maybe they could be different together. Okay, Jason said. Let's train, let's learn, let's get better. Kiara's smile widened. Partners? Partners. They shook hands, a formal gesture that felt important, like they were making a pact, sealing a deal, starting something new. Neither of them knew it yet, but that handshake would change everything, would transform them from victims into warriors, from teenagers into legends, from two broken souls into something stronger together than they'd ever been apart. The door opened again. Doc stuck his head in. Kiara, your father wants to see you. Jason, you've got a visitor. Marcus is asking if you're up for company. Marcus, the bodyguard, the man who'd been tased trying to protect Kiara. Jason felt a stab of guilt. Marcus had been doing his job, and Jason had, what? Shown him up? Proven he wasn't enough? But when Marcus walked in, he wasn't angry. He was grateful. Kid, Marcus said, his voice rough, I owe you. I was down. Useless. If you hadn't stepped up, if Kiara hadn't kept her head, he stopped, swallowed hard. Thank you. You would have done the same. Maybe, but you actually did it. Marcus pulled a leather vest from behind his back. Small, youth-sized, Iron Wolves logo on the back. The club voted. You're official. Not a full patch, you're too young for that. But this marks you as family. When you wear this, people will know you're protected, that you're one of us. Jason took the vest with shaking hands. It was soft leather, well made, smelled like motorcycle exhaust and freedom. On the front was a single patch, Stick. Your road name, Marcus explained. Every member earns one, usually through action or personality. Yours was unanimous, your Stick. The kid who fought off kidnappers with a wooden weapon. The kid who's got more heart than sense. Jason put on the vest. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for him, like he'd been made for it. There's a dinner tonight, Marcus continued. Club tradition after major events. Everyone will be there. You should come. Meet the guys properly. Let them see you're real and not some story Kane made up. Doc said I need to rest. Doc will make an exception. This is important. You're important now, kid, whether you want to be or not. After Marcus left, Jason sat there in his new vest, holding his reinforced stick. His new road name, his new family, his new life. 8 months ago, he'd run from foster care with nothing but anger and grief. Now he had protection, purpose, people who cared if he lived or died. It should have felt good, and it did. But it also felt terrifying, because caring meant vulnerability, meant he could lose again, meant he could fail again. But maybe, Jason thought, maybe that was okay. Maybe the risk of losing was worth the chance of having. Maybe protecting people was worth the cost of getting hurt. He looked at the engraving on his stick. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important. Something else was more important. Kiara's life, Sophie's safety, the chance to keep his promise to Maya, the opportunity to make sure other kids didn't end up like him or his sister, broken by a system that didn't care. That was worth fighting for, worth bleeding for, worth everything. Jason Cole, 15 years old, homeless no longer, stood up carefully. His stitches pulled, his body ached, but he was standing. He was alive. He was part of something bigger than himself. And tonight he'd meet his new family. The Iron Wolves, a motorcycle club full of dangerous men who'd accepted him because he'd proven himself worthy through action. He couldn't wait. Down in the basement, in a soundproofed room that smelled of blood and fear, Tank stood over one of the captured Viper Kings. The man's name was Rico. He had a broken kneecap, courtesy of Jason's stick. He also had several new bruises, courtesy of Tank's fists. I'll ask again, Tank said patiently. Who ordered the hit on Kane's daughter? Vargas, Rico gasped. Miguel Vargas. He's been planning it for weeks. Thought if he had Kiara, he could force Kane to give up territory. Let us expand distribution routes. Where's Vargas now? Don't know. He moves around, never stays in one place, has safe houses all over the city. Tank hit him again. Professionally, efficiently. Wrong answer. Try again. Rico spat blood. I swear, man, he doesn't tell us where he goes. Just shows up when he needs us for a job. We're soldiers, cannon fodder. He doesn't trust us with important shit. Tank studied him, decided he was telling the truth. Vargas was smart enough to compartmentalize information, keep his people in the dark, make himself hard to find. Tell me about his organization, numbers, weapons, safe houses you do know about. Rico talked, gave up everything he knew, which wasn't much, but it was something. Tank recorded it all on his phone. This information would be valuable in the coming war, because war was coming. Everyone knew it. The Viper Kings had crossed the ultimate line, targeted a child, attempted kidnapping. They'd declared war whether they'd meant to or not, and the Iron Wolves would answer, would burn the Viper Kings to the ground, would make an example that would echo through the criminal underworld for years. You don't touch family, you don't target kids, you don't break the code. And if you do, you pay. With everything. Tank finished the interrogation, left Rico zip-tied and bleeding. He'd live, for now. His fate would be decided later, at church, when the club voted on appropriate punishment. Upstairs, Tank found Kane in his office. The president was studying maps, marking locations, planning strategy. Rico sang like a canary, Tank reported, gave us 3 safe house locations. Confirmed Vargas is running the operation. Said they've been planning this for weeks. Numbers? 30 to 40 active members, another 50 or 60 associates, mostly street-level dealers and muscle, not organized like us, more like a gang than a club. Kane marked the map with red X's. We hit them tomorrow night. Simultaneous strikes on all 3 safe houses. Burn their supplies, seize their cash, send a message that echoes. What about Vargas? He'll come out of hiding eventually. Men like him, they can't resist revenge. He'll come for us, and when he does, we'll be ready. Kane looked up. How are the prospects? Jason and Kiara? Jason's up, moving around, tough kid. Kiara's processing. Marcus says she's handling it better than expected. Tank paused. You really going to train them together? You got a problem with it? No, just unusual. Girl that young, that sheltered, and a street kid with more trauma than training. It's a risk. Everything worth doing is a risk. Kane turned back to his maps. They saved each other yesterday, fought as a team without planning or communication. That's instinct. That's rare. I want to see what they can become with proper training. Tank nodded. Kane's instincts were usually solid. If he saw potential in these kids, there was probably something there. One more thing, Tank said. Hammer wants to start them tomorrow. Says if they're serious about training, they need to start while the memory is fresh, while they still remember how close they came to dying. Do it, but keep it controlled. I want them pushed, not broken. Understood. Tank left. Kane stayed at his desk, studying maps and planning war. But part of his mind was on his daughter, on the homeless boy who'd saved her, on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. 5 years ago, he'd lost his wife, had sworn to protect his daughter at all costs, had wrapped her in cotton and steel, kept her locked away from danger. Yesterday, danger had found her anyway, and she'd fought back, with a stolen gun and more courage than trained soldiers. She was Lily's daughter, through and through, strong, fierce, unwilling to be a victim. Maybe it was time to stop protecting her and start preparing her, to stop seeing her as something fragile and start treating her as what she was becoming, a warrior. And Jason? The kid was an enigma, homeless, traumatized. But he had something that couldn't be taught, honor, the kind of deep-seated moral code that made him throw himself between monsters and innocence without calculating the cost. Together, they might become something extraordinary, something the Iron Wolves had never seen before, or they might destroy each other. Trauma meeting trauma, pain meeting pain. Only time would tell. Kane made a note on his calendar. Tomorrow, begin training. 2 weeks, reassess progress. 1 month, church vote on Jason's permanent status. The pieces were moving, the war was starting, and 2 15-year-olds were about to be forged in fire. God help anyone who underestimated them. The warehouse burned. Orange flames climbed 30 feet into the night sky, consuming everything the Viper Kings had built. Drugs, cash, weapons, all of it turning to ash and smoke that rolled across the industrial district like a toxic fog. Jason stood 200 yards away, watching the fire department arrive too late to save anything. Beside him, Kiara held a pair of binoculars tracking the chaos. They weren't supposed to be here. Kane had explicitly forbidden it. But 2 weeks of intensive training had taught them something important. Asking forgiveness was easier than asking permission. 3rd warehouse, Kiara said quietly. That's all of them. Simultaneous strikes. Jason's voice was steadier now. 2 weeks of proper meals and sleep had put weight on his frame. He still looked young, but he didn't look helpless anymore. Your father doesn't do anything halfway. No, he doesn't. They'd watched the Iron Wolves mobilize an hour ago. 40 bikes, 60 men, armored and moving with military precision. 3 teams hitting 3 targets at exactly 10 p.m. Burn everything, take no prisoners, send a message written in fire and fury. The Viper Kings were being systematically destroyed, their operations dismantled, their members scattered, their leader, Miguel Vargas, driven into hiding. But hiding couldn't last forever. We should get back, Jason said, before someone notices we're gone. Too late, Jason turned. Hammer stood behind them, arms crossed, expression unreadable in the firelight. The massive biker had been their trainer for 2 weeks, had pushed them harder than Jason thought possible, taught them Kaylee stick fighting, grappling, tactical awareness, and the difference between street brawling and actual combat. How long have you known we were here? Kiara asked. Since you took Marcus's keys 15 minutes after he specifically told you not to take Marcus's keys. Hammer shook his head. You two are going to give your father a heart attack. Is he angry? Furious, also proud, but mostly furious. Hammer gestured toward a black SUV parked in the shadows. Get in. We're going back before Kane decides to ground you both until you're 30. They followed Hammer to the SUV. Inside, Marcus sat behind the wheel, looking resigned. The taser hit from 2 weeks ago had left him with residual muscle soreness, but Doc had cleared him for light duty 3 days back. I'm never leaving my keys anywhere you two can reach them again, Marcus muttered as they climbed in. You know that, right? You left them on the kitchen counter, Kara pointed out. That's basically asking us to take them. That's basic lack of home security awareness, Jason added. They'd been spending so much time together that they'd developed a rhythm, finished each other's sentences, backed each other's plays, acted like they'd known each other for years instead of weeks. Marcus pulled out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, the warehouse continued to burn. Fire trucks sprayed water that turned to steam against the intensity of the flames. Police established a perimeter. News helicopters circled like vultures. Tomorrow, the headlines would scream about gang violence and criminal activity. The mayor would demand action. The police chief would promise results. And absolutely nothing would change because everyone who mattered understood the real story. The Iron Wolves had declared war, and they were winning. The clubhouse was alive with energy when they returned. Music pounded from the bar area. Men celebrated with alcohol and war stories, recounting the night's raids with the enthusiasm of soldiers after a successful campaign. The air smelled of motorcycle exhaust, spilled beer, and victory. Kane stood in the center of it all, accepting congratulations and coordinating the next phase. When he saw Jason and Kiara walk in with Hammer, his expression darkened. My office, now. They followed him through the crowd. Men parted automatically, making space for their president. Kane's office was soundproofed and secure, decorated with photographs spanning 3 decades of Iron Wolves history. He closed the door. The celebration noise cut off, leaving silence that felt heavy with impending consequences. I specifically told you to stay here. Kane's voice was dangerously calm. To stay safe. To let us handle the war. You did, Kiara agreed. We didn't listen. Clearly, Kane turned to Jason. And you? I expected Kiara to be stubborn. She's my daughter, but you? I thought you had more sense. She goes, I go. Jason's voice was steady. That's the deal we made. Partners. Partners. Kane's laugh was bitter. You're 15 years old, both of you. This isn't a game. This isn't training. This is war. Real people are dying, and you two are playing spy like it's some kind of adventure. We weren't playing. Kiara stepped forward. We were learning, watching how you organize, how you execute, how you coordinate multiple teams across multiple targets. That's valuable information. Information you could have gotten in a briefing. Briefings are theoretical. We saw it executed. That's different. Kiara's gray eyes were steel. You can't keep us locked away forever, Dad. Eventually, we need to see the real thing. Kane stared at his daughter, at the fierce determination that reminded him so painfully of Lily. His wife had been like this too. Stubborn, brave, unwilling to be protected when she thought she should be participating. It had gotten her killed. Your mother thought like that, Kane said quietly. Thought she could handle herself. Thought being my wife meant being my partner in everything. She was wrong. Mom died because someone ambushed her in a parking lot. Not because she was brave. Because someone was evil. Kiara's voice cracked. You can't protect me from evil by locking me away. You can only prepare me to face it. Silence filled the office. Jason stood beside Kiara, saying nothing but making his support clear through presence alone. They were a united front. Partners. Whatever punishment came, they'd face it together. Kane finally sighed, sat down behind his desk like a man carrying the weight of worlds. 2 more weeks of training, he said. Then we reassess. If Hammer says you're ready, if Doc clears you medically, if I'm satisfied with your judgment, then maybe you can be more involved. But until then, you follow orders. Both of you. Understood? Understood, they said in unison. Get out. Go to bed. We'll talk more tomorrow. They left. Outside the office, the celebration continued, but they bypassed it, heading upstairs to the residential wing where Jason now had a room across from Kiara's. 2 more weeks, Kiara said when they reached their doors. Then we prove ourselves. Then we become real members of the team. Jason touched his vest. The leather was worn now from constant wear. The stick patch had become his identity. Thanks for backing me up in there. Always. That's what partners do. They went to their separate rooms, but neither slept immediately. Both lay awake thinking about the fire, the war, the future that was rushing toward them faster than they were ready for. 5 days later, everything changed. Jason was in the training room with Hammer, working through advanced stick combinations. His skill had grown exponentially under proper instruction. He could flow between strikes, blocks, and thrusts without thinking, could read an opponent's body language, could generate power from rotation instead of just arm strength. Better, Hammer grunted, deflecting a strike. You're starting to fight like you've actually been trained instead of just surviving. My survival instincts kept me alive long enough to get trained. Your survival instincts got you stabbed. Training keeps you from getting stabbed again. Hammer pressed the attack, forcing Jason to defend. Again, faster. They were in the middle of a complex drill when Doc burst through the door, phone in hand, face grim. We've got a problem. Vargas just posted a video. He's got Sophie. The world stopped. Sophie, the 8-year-old girl with pigtails and unicorn shirts. The one who'd sat by Jason's bed and asked if he had family. The one who was supposed to be safe at school, protected by Iron Wolf security. Hammer was already moving. Phone out, calling Kane. Jason followed, his training stick still in hand. They found Kane in his office with Tank, Reaper, and Ghost, all crowded around a laptop. On the screen, Miguel Vargas smiled at the camera. Behind him, Sophie sat tied to a chair. She wasn't crying, wasn't screaming, just watching with bindal, terrified eyes that reminded Jason too much of Maya in those final days. Kane Brennan, Vargas said in accented English. You burned my warehouses, killed my men, destroyed my business. Now you learn what it costs to wage war against the Viper Kings. He moved behind Sophie, put a hand on her shoulder. She flinched. I have the girl. You have 48 hours to deliver your daughter to me. Kiara for Sophie. A fair trade, I think. If you refuse, if you involve police, if you try anything clever, the girl dies. Slowly, painfully. While I send you videos of every moment. Vargas leaned close to the camera. 48 hours, Brennan. Choose wisely. The video ended. The office exploded with noise. Men shouting, plans being formed, weapons being discussed. But Jason's ears were ringing. He saw Maya in that chair, saw his sister helpless and terrified, while adults who should have protected her failed. We traced the video, Tank was asking. See if we can find the location? Already tried, Ghost replied. Routed through multiple proxies. Could be anywhere in the city. We call the FBI, Reaper suggested. Make this federal. And risk Sophie's life? Kane's voice cut through the chaos. No, we handle this ourselves. How? We don't know where Vargas is. Could take days to find him. Then we work fast. Kane straightened. Call in every favor. Contact every informant. Put pressure on every Viper King associate we know. Someone knows where Vargas is hiding. Jason stepped forward. Wait, play the video again. Kane looked at him sharply but hit replay. They all watched in silence. Jason focused on the background. Concrete walls, industrial setting. And in the background, barely audible, a sound. Regular, rhythmic. That's an air compressor, Jason said. Like the kind they use in auto body shops. I heard one running just like that in a foster home. The guy rebuilt cars in his garage. Ghost was already pulling up maps on his phone. 3 abandoned auto shops in Viper territory, all former businesses with power still connected. That's still 3 locations, Tank pointed out. We hit the wrong one. Vargas kills Sophie and disappears. The door opened. Kiara walked in, summoned by the emergency. Her face was pale, but her jaw was set with determination. I have an idea, she said. Vargas wants me, so give him what he wants. Absolutely not. Kane's voice was flat. I won't trade you for Sophie. I'm not suggesting a trade. I'm suggesting bait. Kiara moved to the laptop. I called Vargas. Tell him I'll meet him. Public location. He has to bring Sophie to prove she's alive. When he leaves with me, Jason follows. Finds his hideout. Then you hit it with everything. It's too dangerous. It's the only plan that gets Sophie back alive. Kiara's voice was intense. Every minute we debate is a minute she spends terrified. We don't have time for safe plans. Kane looked at his daughter, at Jason, at the determination in both their young faces. They'd been training for 2 weeks, growing stronger, more capable, but they were still 15. Hammer, Kane said finally. Honest assessment. Can they handle this? Hammer studied Jason and Kiara like he was examining weapons for flaws. They've got skills now, not master level, but competent. More importantly, they've got heart. They'll do what needs doing. He met Kane's eyes. I'd trust them to watch my back. That settled it. Kane's expression hardened into something that looked like acceptance mixed with fear. All right, we do this, but we do it smart and we do it careful. He looked at Kiara. You make the call, set up a meeting, public place, lots of witnesses. MacArthur Park, Kiara said immediately, where it started. Kane nodded, turned to Jason. You follow on Marcus's dirt bike, civilian clothes. Look like any other kid. Vargas won't see you as a threat. And when I find the location, you call it in, then you wait. You do not engage. You do not play hero. You wait for us to arrive. Kane's voice was steel. Both of you understand, this isn't training. This is real. People will die. I need to know you can follow orders. We understand, they said together. Kane pulled out his phone. Tank, get the bikes ready. 3 teams staged at strategic points around the city. Ghost, I want every off-duty member armed and ready to roll in 5 minutes. Reaper, call our police contact. I want a 30-minute delay on any 911 calls from MacArthur Park. He looked at Kiara. Make the call. 2 hours from now. That gives us time to position everyone. 2 hours later, Kiara sat in Kane's office with the phone in her hand and her father's entire senior leadership around her. She'd changed into her mother's leather jacket, armor of a different kind. She dialed the number from Vargas's video. It rang 3 times. Kane Brennan, I didn't expect you to call so soon. This isn't Kane, this is Kiara. Silence, then laughter. The daughter calls personally. How brave, how foolish. You want me for Sophie. I accept, but I set the terms. You don't set anything, little girl. I do if you want this trade to happen. Kiara's voice was steady. Years of watching her father negotiate. Years of learning how power worked. MacArthur Park, 1 hour. You bring Sophie alive and unharmed. I come alone. We make the exchange in public where everyone can see. You try anything stupid, every cop in the city lands on you. And why would I agree to this? Because you're not an idiot. You know my father is looking for you. Know he'll find you eventually. This way, you get what you want, you disappear with leverage, and you live. The alternative is he finds you anyway and you die screaming. Kiara paused. 1 hour, don't be late. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking now. Kane pulled her into a hug. You did perfect, baby. Now we execute. MacArthur Park at sunset was surprisingly peaceful. Families played on the grass, joggers circled the pond, street vendors sold food from carts. Life continued, oblivious to the deadly game about to unfold. Kiara sat on a bench near the pin wearing her mother's jacket like a talisman. No weapon visible, no phone, no backup she could see. Just a 15-year-old girl waiting for a monster. But she wasn't alone. 200 yards away, Jason sat on Marcus's dirt bike, helmet on, looking like any other teenager waiting for friends. He had a burner phone in his pocket. His reinforced stick was strapped to the bike frame. He looked casual, felt like his heart might explode from his chest. Around the park's perimeter, disguised in civilian cars and delivery vans, 40 iron wolves waited with engines running and weapons ready. A black van pulled into the parking lot, the same van from the first attack. It parked with the engine running, side door facing the park. The door slid open. Vargas stepped out. He looked smaller than on video. Mid-30s, lean and dangerous like a knife. The snake tattoo on his neck seemed to move in the fading light. Behind him, two of his men dragged Sophie out. She was blindfolded, hands zip-tied, but breathing. Kiara stood, started walking toward them with measured steps that looked confident even though her stomach was churning with fear. "Show me she's alive," Kiara called when she was 20 feet away. Vargas pulled off Sophie's blindfold. The little girl blinked in the sudden light. Saw Kiara. Started to cry. "Kiara, don't trade yourself. He's going to..." One of the vipers clamped a hand over her mouth. Sophie struggled but couldn't break free. "Let her go," Kiara said. "I'm here. That's what you wanted." Vargas smiled. It was the smile of a man who thought he'd already won. "So brave, just like your mother was. Tell me, did Lily cry when the bullets hit? Did she beg?" Kiara's hands clenched into fists, but she kept walking, kept her face neutral. "When Sophie is safe, I get in your van. That's the deal." Vargas considered, nodded. "Cut her loose." One of his men pulled out a knife, cut Sophie's zip ties, gave her a push toward the bench. She stumbled, caught herself, started running. Kiara walked toward Vargas. This was it, the moment of commitment. If this went wrong, if Jason lost them, if the Iron Wolves were too slow, she pushed the thoughts away, focused on putting one foot in front of the other. Vargas grabbed her arm when she got close. His grip was iron. "Smart girl. Your father should have taught you better than to trust criminals. He taught me that family is worth dying for." "Then you learned the wrong lesson." Vargas started pulling her toward the van. Behind them, Sophie had reached the bench. But instead of running away, she reached underneath where Marcus had hidden something earlier. A backup pistol, loaded, safety off, ready. Sophie's hands shook as she raised it, pointed it at Vargas with tears streaming down her face. "Let her go!" Everything stopped. Vargas spun, using Kiara as a human shield. His two men drew weapons. The families in the park started screaming, running. Exactly the chaos Kane had wanted to avoid. "Stupid child," Vargas snarled. "Put that down or I kill her right now." Sophie's hands were shaking so badly the gun wavered. "You're a bad man. You hurt people. Someone has to stop you." The Viper on the left aimed his gun at Sophie, an 8-year-old girl holding a weapon she barely knew how to use. He was going to shoot her. Jason saw it happening, saw the man's finger tightening on the trigger. He didn't think, just moved. The dirt bike roared to life. Jason twisted the throttle and shot across the grass toward the group. People scattered. The Viper turned, surprised, bringing his gun around, but too slow. Jason had his stick out, swung it like a lance as he passed. The impact caught the man in the temple with every ounce of momentum from the bike. The Viper dropped like his strings had been cut. His gun skittered across the pavement. Jason skidded the bike to a stop, jumped off, faced Vargas with his stick ready. "You again." Vargas's voice was filled with contempt. "The street rat with the stick. You cost me good men last time. Let her go. Or what, you'll hit me with your toy?" The second Viper was moving now, coming at Jason from the side. Jason saw him, shifted his stance. This was different from training. Real speed, real stakes, real consequences. The man swung a crowbar. Jason blocked with his stick. The impact shuddered through his arms, but the reinforced hickory held. He twisted, jabbed low, caught the man in the knee. Not hard enough to break like last time, but enough to buckle him. A follow-up strike to the solar plexus. The man went down gasping. Vargas shoved Kiara toward the van. "Get her inside, now!" But Kiara wasn't cooperating. She drove her elbow backward into Vargas's ribs. The move hammer had drilled into them. Sharp, precise, all her body weight behind it. Vargas grunted. His grip loosened. Kiara spun, swept his legs with a low kick. He stumbled. She dove for the fallen Viper's gun, came up with it in a two-handed grip exactly like Marcus had taught her. "I said let her go." Vargas was already moving, rolling toward the van. His driver gunned the engine. Tires squealed. The van lurched forward with the side door still open. Vargas grabbed the frame, hauled himself inside even as the vehicle accelerated. "I've got him!" Jason was already on his bike, started the engine. The van was pulling away fast, but the dirt bike was nimble. "Jason, wait!" Kiara's voice. But he couldn't wait. Couldn't let Vargas escape. Not after everything. Behind him he heard motorcycles starting, heard Kane shouting orders, heard chaos erupting. But he was already in motion, following the van as it weaved through traffic. The chase was brutal. 20 minutes of adrenaline-fueled pursuit through city streets. The van ran red lights. Jason followed. The van cut through an alley. Jason threaded after it, his hands cramped on the handlebars, his heart hammered against his ribs. But he didn't lose them. Finally, the van pulled into an abandoned auto body shop on the edge of the warehouse district, one of the 3 locations Ghost had identified. Jason drove past without slowing. Just another kid on a bike. Pulled into an alley 2 blocks away, grabbed his phone, texted Kane the address. The response was immediate. 15 minutes out. Do not engage. Wait for backup. Jason stared at his phone. At the auto shop 2 blocks away, where Sophie might still be, where Vargas was probably planning his next move. 15 minutes felt like forever. He thought about Maya, how adults had told him to wait, to trust the system, to let them handle it, and how she died while everyone waited. He couldn't wait, not again. Jason grabbed his stick, started moving toward the auto shop. He'd be careful, smart, just reconnaissance, just making sure Sophie was okay. He told himself these lies as he approached the building. Told himself he was just gathering information. Told himself he'd wait for backup once he knew for sure. But deep down, he knew the truth. If Sophie was in danger, if Vargas was hurting her, Jason would act, would fight, would do whatever it took. Even if it meant fighting alone. Even if it killed him. The auto shop was dark, windows boarded up, but Jason could see light leaking around the edges, could hear voices inside. Angry voices, Vargas giving orders. He circled the building, found a side door that was locked but old. The frame was rotted. Jason worked his stick into the gap, applied pressure. The wood splintered. The door popped open with a crack that sounded like thunder in the quiet night. Jason froze, waited for shouts, for gunfire, for someone to come investigate. Nothing. He slipped inside. The interior was exactly what he'd expected. Old auto shop, workbenches covered in tools, car lifts rusted in place, oil stains on the concrete floor, and in the center, under a single hanging work light, Sophie tied to a chair. She was crying now, quiet tears that spoke of exhaustion and terror. 3 Vipers stood guard around her. Vargas paced nearby, talking on his phone. "Yes, I have the girl. No, Brennan's daughter got away. It doesn't matter. We still have leverage. We demand money, territory, safe passage out of the city. If he refuses, the girl dies and we disappear." Jason's mind raced. 3 guards plus Vargas. He'd taken 3 at the ice cream truck, but he'd had Kiara's help, had surprise, had desperation-fueled adrenaline. Now he was alone, already tired from the chase, facing men who were alert and armed. Terrible odds. Jason gripped his stick tighter, stepped out of the shadows. "Let her go." Every head turned. The Vipers went for their weapons. Vargas smiled like a man who'd just been given a gift. "The street rat. You followed me. Alone." Vargas laughed. "Brave, stupid, but brave." "I won't let you hurt her." "You won't let me?" Vargas pulled out a pistol, aimed it at Sophie's head. You're one boy with a stick. I have 3 men and enough bullets to paint these walls red. What exactly do you think you were going to do? Jason didn't answer, just moved. He threw his stick, not at Vargas, at the work light. The hickory hit the bulb. Glass exploded. Darkness flooded the space. Jason was already diving left, rolled behind a workbench. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like strobe lights. Bullets sparked off metal, ricocheted off concrete. Sophie screamed. Jason used the sound to orient himself, started moving through the darkness. He knew this environment, had lived in abandoned buildings, could navigate by sound and feel. The Vipers were stumbling, cursing, shooting at shadows. Jason found a wrench on the floor, threw it across the room. It clanged off a wall. 3 guns turned toward the sound. More gunfire, more wasted bullets. He was behind them now. Retrieved his stick from where it had fallen, swung low at the nearest Viper's legs, connected. The man went down with a shout. Jason followed up with a strike to the head. The man stopped moving. 2 left plus Vargas. Enough, Vargas's voice. Turn on your phone lights, idiots. Flashlights clicked on. Beams cut through the darkness. Found Jason standing in the open, trapped. Both remaining Vipers aimed their guns. Jason raised his stick, knowing it was useless, knowing this was how it ended, but refusing to go down without fighting. Any last words, street rat? Jason met Vargas's eyes. Just one. Now. The wall exploded. A motorcycle crashed through the boarded-up window. Then another. And another. Iron wolves poured into the space like an avenging army. Headlights flooded the darkness. Engines roared. The Vipers spun, confused, overwhelmed. Kane Brennan came through the door with 40 men behind him, all armed. Ready for war. Drop your weapons. Kane's voice was thunder. Now. The Vipers looked at their guns, at the overwhelming force surrounding them, at their boss who was already backing toward a rear exit. They dropped their weapons, but Vargas ran, sprinted for the back door. Jason saw him going, saw him escaping, saw justice slipping away. He ran after him, burst through the rear door into an alley. Vargas was 20 feet ahead, running hard. Jason was faster, younger. Driven by 8 months of street survival that had built endurance Vargas couldn't match. He closed the distance, swung his stick, caught Vargas in the back of the knees. The gang leader went down hard, rolled, came up with his pistol. You should have stayed down, boy. The gun came up. Jason saw his death in Vargas's eyes. A gunshot cracked through the alley. But Jason didn't feel any pain, didn't feel the bullet, because the bullet hadn't been aimed at him. Vargas looked down at his gun hand, at the pistol lying on the ground, at the blood streaming from his wrist where the bullet had passed through. At the end of the alley, Kiara stood with her father's rifle. Smoke curled from the barrel. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were clear. I told you to let her go, Kiara said quietly. Vargas clutched his bleeding hand. Started to run again. Made it 5 steps before Kane stepped out from a doorway. 1 punch. Vargas dropped like a stone. That's for my wife, Kane said, and for every child you've ever threatened. Iron wolves poured into the alley, surrounded Vargas, zip-tied his hands, dragged him to his feet. What do we do with him, boss? Tank asked. Kane looked at Jason, at Kiara, at the 2 15-year-olds who'd just taken down a gang leader through courage and partnership. We give him to the police, Kane said, with enough evidence to put him away for life. And we make sure every criminal in this city knows what happens when you break the code, when you target children, when you go to war with the Iron Wolves. He turned to his daughter. You shot the gun out of his hand. 40 yards. Moving target. Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that? I've been practicing. Kiara lowered the rifle. You're not the only one who can use a range without being noticed. Kane looked like he didn't know whether to hug her or ground her for life. He settled for both, pulled her into a fierce embrace while muttering about reckless daughters and heart attacks. Jason went to Sophie, cut her free with a knife one of the Iron Wolves handed him. She threw her arms around his neck and sobbed into his shoulder. You came back, she whispered. You promised you'd protect people, and you came back. Always will, Jason promised. That's what family does. Six, 6 months later, the Iron Wolves clubhouse had never been more packed. Every member of the national chapter had shown up, even representatives from allied clubs. The occasion was historic. 2 prospect ceremonies on the same day. Jason stood in the center of the room wearing his prospect vest. It was worn now, covered in patches and pins from 6 months of proving himself, 6 months of runs and poise and loyalty tests, 6 months of becoming one of them. Beside him stood Kiara in her own prospect vest. She'd taken a different path, had to prove more because of who her father was, because people assumed she'd get special treatment. She'd worked twice as hard, trained twice as long, earned her place through actions that left no room for doubt. Kane stood before them with the club's senior leadership flanking. In his hands were 2 leather cuts, full member cuts, the Iron Wolves logo emblazoned on the back, the front decorated with patches that told stories. Jason Cole, Kane said, his voice carried across the silent room. 6 months ago, you saved my daughter's life with nothing but a stick and more courage than sense. You fought when everyone else ran, protected when everyone else watched, bled when everyone else turned away. He held up the first cut. This club votes unanimously to make you a full patch member of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club. Your road name is Stick. Your place is earned. Your brotherhood is sealed. He draped the cut over Jason's shoulders. Welcome home, brother. The room erupted in applause, men shouting, whistles, the sound of acceptance and celebration. Jason felt tears prick his eyes. Thought about Maya. Hoped she could see this. Hoped she knew he'd kept his promise, had protected others, had found a family that would never abandon him. Kane turned to Kiara. Kiara Brennan, you're my daughter, my blood. But that's not why you're getting this cut. His voice was thick with emotion. You've earned it the same way every member here has earned it. Through sacrifice, through loyalty, through proving again and again that you're willing to stand between your brothers and danger. He held up the second cut. This club votes unanimously to make you a full patch member, the first woman to wear our colors. Your road name is Ember, for the fire in your heart that refuses to be extinguished, for the light you bring to dark places, for the heat you bring to every fight. He draped the cut over her shoulders, pulled her into a hug, whispered something in her ear that only she could hear. When they separated, Kiara's eyes were wet, but her smile was radiant. The party that followed was legendary. Music, food, stories told and retold. Jason found himself surrounded by brothers, men who'd become family, who'd taught him, trained him, accepted him. Hammer clapped him on the shoulder. You did good, Stick. Real good. Couldn't have done it without you, without all of you. That's what family is for. Speaking of which, Hammer gestured toward the door. You've got a visitor. Jason turned. A young girl stood in the doorway, maybe 12 years old, dirty, thin, holding a backpack that contained everything she owned. She looked scared, lost, desperate. Jason walked over, knelt down to her eye level, saw himself in her eyes, saw the fear and hope and determination to survive. Hey, you okay? I heard, the girl said quietly, about the Iron Wolves, about how you protect people, how you help kids who have nowhere else to go. She swallowed hard. My name is Piper, and I need help. Jason looked back at Kiara. She'd seen the girl too, was already moving toward them. They shared a look, a understanding that needed no words. They'd been where this girl was, alone, afraid, convinced the world was cruel and no one cared. They'd been saved. Now it was their turn to save others. Come on, Piper, Kiara said gently. Let's get you some food. Then we'll figure out how to help. Jason stood, put a hand on Piper's shoulder. You're safe now, that's a promise. As they led her inside into the warmth and noise and family, Jason touched his stick. It hung on the wall now. Mounted in a place of honor, the weapon that had started everything. Beneath it, a new plaque had been added, words that had become the motto of Jason and Kiara's mission. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that someone else's safety is more important than your own. Sophie came running over. She was 8 years old still. Still wore unicorn shirts, but her eyes were brighter now. The trauma had faded. She'd been in therapy, was healing, thriving. Is that the new girl, Sophie asked, the one you're going to help? Yeah, Jason said. Want to show her around? Sophie took Piper's hand. Come on, I'll introduce you to everyone. They're scary looking, but they're actually nice. Well, mostly nice. Tank is kind of grumpy, but he makes really good pancakes. The two girls walked off together, Sophie chattering, Piper listening with wide eyes. Kane joined Jason and Kiara, looked at his daughter with pride and love, and a hint of fear that came from knowing she was going to spend her life in danger. You two are going to be the death of me, Kane said. You know that, right? Probably, Kiara agreed. She leaned against her father's shoulder. But we'll make you proud first. You already have. Kane's voice was rough. Both of you. The party continued around them, the Iron Wolves in full celebration, a family that had grown by two today. That would keep growing as Jason and Kiara found more kids who needed protection, who needed a home, who needed someone to stand between them and the world's cruelty. The war with the Viper Kings was over. Vargas was in prison, his organization destroyed, but there would be other threats, other dangers, other children who needed heroes, and Jason and Kiara would be there. Partners, warriors, protectors. The street kid with nothing and the sheltered daughter had become something neither expected. They'd become legends, and their story was just beginning.